Okay, that's most of you. And then there's some of you who don't have a camera and I don't see your hands. So if yes, thumbs up. Excellent, excellent. So then you probably know a thing or two about Atlanta. I'm not too far away from y'all. It's still a southern city. It's about maybe a tad bit bigger than Charlotte, and yet a little bit different than Charlotte to a certain degree. And yes, I'm not native to either of these cities. And as you can see in the name here, there's these funky two dots over that letter. You see it, there's these dots over the O. That probably tells you that I'm either German, Turkish, or Swedish. I think those are the only three languages in the world that make those two dots over the O. And it creates a weird sound that English speakers are not familiar with. So I'm going to say my name the way my mom would say it. So my mom would call me Christian instead of Christian. And then our last name is Höferle. So we make a circle, a small circle with our mouth and say, and by the end of this session, you'll all know how to say that, um, so different languages make different sounds, which was hard for me as a speaker of German as my first language, because the English language makes funny sounds too. You have this letter sequence of T and H, and it creates this lisp sound, which we don't have in the German language. So it's hilarious the first couple of years in English as a foreign language class in any German school, how kids get used to creating a lisp, something that their parents have been wanting to avoid their kids to make because they don't want a kid with a lisp. So now we're deliberately doing this, and then it sounds so weird. So when you hear Germans speak English, they do have a very hard time to speak with the th sound. So it almost sounds like a z sound, and this makes for a very funny accent. So I used to speak like this in the beginning, and then everything changed when I confronted my parents. So here's why I go back a little bit. Um, I grew up in a small town, 20,000 people, maybe less. And I grew up as the first of two sons of a working class / entrepreneurial family. So my dad was a butcher, and we had a family business. We had a small town European butcher shop, and my dad would do the whole value creation process from the living animal to the sausage you buy. And they never had seen a university from the inside. They heard about it, but the firstborn son right here, there was this expectation back in the 70s and 80s when I grew up. The firstborn son takes over the family business, right? Well, you heard Jeannie tell you what I do, so that didn't quite happen. So one day in high school, I came home and said, "Hey, Mom, Dad, my English teacher talked about school exchange programs." And my mom and dad were like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. You mean like summer break? You go to England for 3 or 4 weeks to brush up on your English?" "Yeah, we've heard about that." And I said, "Yeah, more like a year to the United States." And my parents, after they collected their jaws from the kitchen floor, they said, "Is that really something you do?" I said, "Yeah, I would." And so I spent the year 1988 in the beautiful state of Minnesota. Yeah, you betcha. Yeah, Joni. Yes, I saw that. Yeah, that was me, deer in headlights, or more like moose in headlights, as would be probably more appropriate in Minnesota. And that's where the German accent quickly disappeared, because I was surrounded by native speakers of the English language from morning till night. I went to high school. I spent an entire year there. Brutally cold winters. We're talking 40 below. This is where I learned one big difference between the continents, that the metric system 40 below is the same as Fahrenheit 40 below. In either way, it is very, very cold. Don't do it. And the summers are in the hundreds. So I experienced weather extremes that I had never seen or experienced before. So my set of what I call normal, in quotation marks, was challenged. For the first time in my life as a 17-year-old, I recognized what I thought to be normal, the way people do things, the way people behave with each other, talk with each other, interact with each other, my normal wasn't normal anymore because other people were doing things differently. And my gut reflex, my reptilian brain told me, yeah, I don't like this. This is different. They do it wrong. No, that's not how you do it. I didn't say it out loud. Maybe sometimes I did. I was 17 and cocky and stupid, but I was like, no, you don't do it that way. This is wrong. This is potentially not safe, or it's just not right. So my behavioral reflexes kicked in. Now I rejected some of the things that I saw around me and thought, I don't like this. And just one moment or moment and a half later, I realized, but wait a second, they're getting results too. They don't do it right, according to my standards, but still they get results. That's weird, because you shouldn't be getting results for doing it wrong. I mean, I could tell you how to do it right, but you're still getting results. Maybe you're not going to listen to me anyway. So that's when, as a 17-year-old, I realized maybe there's more than one right way of doing things. Now, this is where value systems kicks in, right? I'm sure Jeanne has shared with you the values-based personality profiling instrument that she and I work with. Values are the things that we know are right. So the things that we deep inside know this is the right way of doing. And our belief system is what we truly believe to be true. So beliefs and values, they decide how we show up in the world. They create the do's and the don'ts. And my values were questioned. Oh, wait a second, they're doing it wrong, but they're doing something that's of value and that is actually aligned with my value. How come this happens? How come you can do a different behavior and still be right? So for a 17-year-old, this was me having my proverbial blinders taken off and having been rattled awake and say, hey, what's up, puppy? There is many of those things around the world. It's called culture. And it didn't hit me until later in my adult life that this is actually something that I could do professionally. I've done it since my 17th birthday, but I didn't galvanize it into a business until 12 years ago. So I was in my first career, I was in media, I was a journalist, I worked in the music and entertainment industry as in that function. And my employers always sent me on those assignments that put me in touch with what they called the Anglos, the Brits, the Americans, the Canadians, the Aussies, the New Zealanders, because Christian gets them. So I thought I get them because of my language skills, because I spoke English better than everybody else in the company. But now I know it wasn't just that. They sent me because I truly understand Anglo-Saxon culture better than most Germans. And if you hear a dog bark in the background, that's because it is a dog. So he's very excited to be here as well. So my career has been shaped by this transatlantic experience. And when my wife and I decided to move to the United States in the early 2000s, I still didn't do what I do now. I was still working as a journalist, and I was still working as a freelancer for many different outlets around the world. And all of a sudden, a small automotive company from Germany that you may have heard of, they're called Volkswagen. You may have seen their products in the streets. They decided to build a plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we lived 20 minutes away from that. And I turned to my wife and said, honey, I think the Germans found us. So we tried to get away, and yet Germany followed us all the way over here. And I also realized quickly that what I experienced, my own family, my personal and professional experience, will be similar for those who come here to work from abroad. That they have a misconceived expectation of what the United States are. When Europeans who have never been to the US or only traveled to the US think of the United States, they think of New York, Chicago, Miami, Florida beaches, Grand Canyon, LA, maybe San Francisco too. That's about it. But not the Tennessee Valley, and probably, well, some might know now Charlotte, but they don't, that's not their first thought. They know Charlotte because they work for BMW and fly into Charlotte. That's how they know Charlotte. But that's a very, that's a small defined niche. But the general public in Germany, doesn't even know the history of Charlotte. They don't know that Charlotte is named after a German princess or queen. They don't know that Mecklenburg County is the seat of your city. And Mecklenburg, believe it or not, is one of the states in Germany. Germany has 16 states. One of them is called Mecklenburg. So that's how famous your county is, but most Germans are not even aware of that. So when they come to the US, they have this wrong notion of what it would be like. And then they find out that depending on where they're sent, in my case to the Tennessee Valley, that life isn't what they expected it to be. People talk differently, people behave differently. It's not what the media and movies and pop culture showed to them. It is a different environment. And knowing this, I was at the right place at the right time. Then Volkswagen gave me a call and said, "Hey, we have an issue here, and we heard you could help us with this." And that's how all this started. So 10, 12 years later, I have a company with this name here in the background, and we work with multinationals, or as Jeannie said, with the people who work in multinationals, because it's not companies who go global, it's their people who need to be global ready. So we do what some would call the soft skills work, which is a term that I don't like very much, because soft skills sounds like it's a nice to have. It's a skill that's not, well, it's not hard, it's soft, it's something that apparently is not as important. And I challenge that. I say, without your so-called soft skills, none of your hard skills will work, because without the ability to efficiently relate to one another, without the ability to efficiently communicate, inspire, manage, lead other people, your hard skill, all your technical subject matter expertise will only be worth half as much, if at all, because you might be the best brain surgeon in the world. If you can't get your foreign colleagues to collaborate with you in an efficient way, then all your expertise, or much of your expertise, will be left out, or it will not work as efficiently. So we say, our company says, we are the aspirin or the ibuprofen to your international intercultural headaches. So companies come to us when they want to get their people global ready. So we do this with coaching, with training, with mentoring, with educational things. And I initially, it was mainly the German American connection because of my personal history. Now, over the years, it has evolved much beyond that, and we often deal with people who go from or into cultures that have nothing to do with either Germany or the US, and it's very rewarding work, because I almost feel like a teacher. That is something that I never wanted to be. I will never forget this. My history teacher in German high school, after history class, we were sent into lunch break, and she stopped me in the hallway as she was locking up the classroom, and she said, "Hey, Christian, have you thought about what you're going to be after school? What you're going to go study for?" I said, "Yeah, well, there's a few ideas here and there. Have you thought about becoming a teacher?" And I said, "Are you freaking out of your mind? Teacher? I mean, I see how you struggle. No, 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 no. This is not for me." And she said, "I think you will be a great teacher." And I said, "Yeah, I don't, whatever. Thank you. And no thanks." And now I wish I could find that lady and tell her that she was right. Because that's what I do. That's what teachers do. We collect information, we source it from all different angles, and we sort it in order of relevance and importance, and we feed it back to someone who needs to have that information. And it's, for me, it's a very rewarding work. And it is rewarding for me because, as Jeannie said, it's about creating peace and allowing people to be at a peak. When I say peak, I don't mean at peak experience all the time. What I mean is to be the best they can be. And I would even argue that within our group that we see here, and within Greater Charlotte, within the southeastern quadrant of the United States, within the entire country, there's so much difference among us, despite the many similarities that we have, that our differences sometimes get in our way. And my work is targeted at removing or identifying the differences and finding ways to minimize them. Because I see different generations here in this room, I see different ethnicities, I probably see different occupational paths, even though I don't know this. And the what I've learned through my work is the beauty of the difference. I used to be not scared, but I used to be irritated by difference because it prompted me to think more. It prompted me to adjust, which isn't always comfortable. This new normal to adjust to somebody else's behavior wasn't always what I wanted to do. And it's not in our nature. We default to those that are like us. However, I learned that if I can expand my bandwidth of behavior, and we all have that, we don't all act the same way every time. So we have a bandwidth, how much assertive we need to be with some people or how much conciliatory we can be with others, or how authoritative we are with some people and how more obedient we are with others. We can adjust it. We all have a bandwidth within our behavior, and as we learn to stretch that bandwidth a little bit, I recognize the connections I make with people are deeper, they're more effective, and they are longer lasting. So that's why my underlying mission is to create peace in light of the difference. And our country here, the United States, you see this, you turn on the news every day, and it's been like this for months, if not years. Difference seems to be the headline that sells, right? It's easier to point out that which is different, and we can stigmatize it and say this is wrong, and we are right, and no matter which political sandbox you want to hop on, everybody is benefiting from dividing rather than uniting. And dividing is not my mode of operation. So I want to be a peacemaker. That's why I do the work I do. And whether that is reconciling generational differences or educational or ethnic differences, religious ones, it all comes down to how can we as humans be peaceful with each other. And that's what brings me back to Germany, which is in the humble way that I look at my work, my nationality, my passport matters in this regard. Typically it doesn't. I don't care much about my passport. However, in my work, the reason why I do the work that I do is because of my country's of my country of origin and the history that is connected to that. So some of you, if not all of you, are probably familiar with the fact that 70, 80 years ago, my ancestors were not really good at dealing with those who are different. In fact, we mass murdered them. My my grandparents and my great grandparents' generation systematically killed 6 million Jews. Let that sink in. And many more that didn't fit the narrative. And while I think it's been dealt with ad nauseum how bad that was and how horrible that memory is, as a German, that story never fades away, right? That's always present. In, I would say, not every interaction, but in many interactions that I have, at some point, this is woven into the fabric of the conversation. So for me, as a German who was born 35 years after the end of that terrible time, I don't feel guilt because I didn't do anything. However, I do feel an obligation to create peace because of cultural understanding. That is what my grandparents and great grandparents failed to do. They were unable to deal with difference and chose a path that I wish upon no one. I wish upon no society and no country, whether on the receiving end nor on the perpetrating end. Because let me tell you, even as a descendant of the people that committed the crime and were not the victims, it feels horrible to carry that torch. and I'm not carrying it with me. I know it's there, and I put it in the wall, and once in a while it burns, and it reminds me that I need to do my work. So the purpose of my work is not to change history, because I can't. However, I see my purpose in being a facilitator of peace, and that is a very rewarding work. Um, and and yes, you can use the German story and say, well, that's a particular historic event, and good for you, Christian. However, I think it's easy to use that as an example and extrapolate from that to any type of conflict, whether it be domestically or internationally around the world. It all boils down to the same thing: people failing to communicate efficiently with each other in light of their differences. And that's my life's work. So that's the story I tell. That's the story I'm truly passionate about. If I hope you can tell, even though my dog tried to be more passionate than me, but I think somebody got him under control, which is awesome. But enough of me talking. Now you heard my story. This is what I do and why it's important to me, and I think why it should be important to a lot of people. I'm also here to answer questions, and Jeannie opened the can of worms already, and I'm gonna rip it open all the way. I'm ready to engage rather than lecture or talk. So thank you for hearing me out. I'm grateful for having had the opportunity. And if you haven't read it yet, check out the July magazine of Toastmasters magazine. I had the honor of being one of the contributors, or at least the one of the people that they interviewed for that story. There was I think 4 or 5 page spread on giving evaluations across cultural differences. So if you get a chance, look it up, either in the print copy or online. There's excellent other people quoted as well. It wasn't just me talking, and I know them all. They're excellent facilitators and practitioners in the field. I'm proud to be one of them in that story. So that was my initiation to Toastmasters, and I guess that's one of the reasons, aside from my relationship with Jeannie, that I have the pleasure of being here today. So enough of me now.
Well, thank you, sir. I
Thank
love
you.
listening to you, and I'm going to point something out for my Toastmasters people and all. The ease and grace that some of us forget when life happens. Dogs bark, Brigida in the background, which is his wife. And, life
Oh, you heard her
happening.
too? Okay.
Oh my gosh, she's hilarious. And however, he never broke stride. We never saw him sweat. He acknowledged it and just moved on. And that right there to me is just speaks volumes for your expertise on how to just go with the flow of what's happening and just speak to the culture and the culture differences and how to just they're there. A lot of us try to remove it, and there's no removing. It's how do we flow and balance within that. And that's why I love listening to you speak.
Right. Well, thank you.
I love
And
it.
I don't know exactly about the demographic mix in Charlotte, but if I'm not mistaken, it is also a very diverse city, isn't it? I would suspect it's predominantly white, but I think you have a very strong Black African American population, and also a strong, I believe, Asian pocket as well, or maybe Latino. I'm not sure how strong your Latino population is in Charlotte, but it is a quite diverse city, isn't it?
Yes, it is a very diverse city, and that's why I thought it was important to introduce you up in our area to other Toastmasters, business owners, and so on, because it is. And what you do to me is extremely important, and you do it so well. You do it so well. He is
Thank you.
such an expert in his field. Uh, who's got some questions for him?
If I can go, I'm a career counselor at Rocky River High School in Mint Hill. And when you say soft skills, we now call it essential employability skills, because like you said, your expertise means nothing if you can't play well with others. And
Right.
So I wrote down so many phrases that you said that I can just use with my students. So
Nice.
thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm wondering, I can't place your accent. Is this is not Charlotte native, is it?
I grew up in South Carolina, but my husband was in the Navy, so we moved around. So, but I'm very Southern, trust me, very, very.
That's good. And to clarify this is, I don't think I have Southernisms in my English. Maybe once in a while you'll hear me say y'all or something like that, because I've lived here in the South for so long. So I probably sound more like an immigrant, or even worse, like a Midwesterner Yankee. So forgive me. But for me, local accents are my pickup line. That's the first impression that I often have of people, because it helps me sometimes, not always, sometimes it helps me pinpoint where might you be from. And I'm always very curious about that, because in my country, which is much smaller than the US, we also have these very regional differences and different dialects. So I'm a Southern boy, I'm a Southeasterner in both countries, right? I come from the southeast of Germany and I live in the southeast of the US. So I do relate to Southernisms.
Thank you.
Awesome. And Nan has her hand up.
Hi, Nan Nessel.
Hi.
I'm a visitor at this group. The original pronunciation, I believe, would be Nuschle. Family's originally from near Tübingen.
Yes, that name looks very Swabian. Yes.
I have
Which
to
means a little Nussle means a small nut.
It's appropriate. Jeanne will verify. I have to agree with what Elaine said. I think soft skills is not the right term, but in my case, you also said something about them not being easy to learn. And in my field, that's particularly true. I'm going to have to be sitting down with one of our surgeons about that today. She happens to be chief of staff, and her inability to sway another surgeon's decision about when to transfer a patient was catastrophic. So she needs to be able to have the leadership skills to direct people, and she's recognized this. So the next step is moving her into the classes that will help her with that communication.
Right. And I see in your name that you use an acronym. I would suspect that's your bank code.
Yeah, that's my bank code.
So you're already familiar with the personality profiling system that I mentioned in the beginning. And I want to make sure that I'm not misunderstood. Cultural differences are one piece of our communicative presence, but it doesn't explain everything, right? We are from a culture, and we also are our own personality type, and we have our individual bank codes. And looking at those elements in an isolated manner isn't going to help us. So we need more building blocks to build the whole model. So I could have included that in my name, right? So my bank code, for those of you who are familiar with it, I don't know, maybe some of you might have already recognized what my bank code is. Those of you, how many of you, show of hands, how many of you are familiar with the personality profiling system?
Only
So
a
that's
few
a
of
lot
them.
of you.
Yeah.
So would you be able to guess my bank code?
Come on, Nan.
Should be able to, but no.
Knowledge, nurture, action, blueprint.
Okay, not quite, but I understand where you come from with the nurturer, because of the heartfelt narrative that I was giving you that would lead you to believe that nurturing is my dominant. I get it. In fact, knowledge is by far, I think if you've done the assessment, I'm 25, so I'm all there is to get in knowledge. So I'm K first, and then I'm action nurturing, same value. So action nurturing is interchangeable for me. Blueprint lasts. So similar to Nan, blueprint. Yeah, don't talk to me about systems and structure and templates. I will run from you. So those things play a role as well. So it's not just the culture. That's why we termed And this is the contractor downstairs. Awesome. This works well today. Our studio complex, our TV studio has moved a little bit. We're in a makeshift studio right now, but we have hundreds of volunteers in our multiplex downstairs installing soundproof walls for the future. No, I'm just kidding. So we coined a term in our company with our clients. We call it ICE-Q. I'm gonna type that into the chat box here. We call it ICE-Q, and ICE-Q is not ice cube, the wrapper or the frozen water thing that you put in your glass. ICE-Q is a combination of IQ, which is your subject matter expertise, CQ, which is cultural intelligence, and EQ, that is emotional intelligence. So the three in combination are the secret sauce. So if you're super smart in your field and you're the surgeon or chief of staff in your healthcare facility, however, you lack the emotional intelligence to recognize that other colleagues have a different model of the world or go about problem solving in another way, that will not allow this leader to see the best solution that's possible within their organization. So if you don't have certain elements of this, then it's going to be tough. Right? Any other questions, comments, ideas?
I have a question.
Hey, Donald.
Hey, my family too is German. They're from I'm not real sure, but I think is it Alsace-Lorraine area of Germany?
Oh, beautiful. Which is now part of France, but it's so you Huguenots? Is the family Huguenots?
No, not that I know of anyway.
Okay, yeah, Alsace-Lorraine is right on the river. Right, it's right between. Again,
Right between Screech and the Holler.
It's between Screech and Holler, right? It's right on the River Rhine, and it was a hotly contested area for centuries. And after World War One, it became part of France for good, and it's a bilingual area. So people speak predominantly French, but a lot of them speak German still, and that's what makes the food so great. So I'm sure your family has some good recipes that I should come and try out.
I don't know. We've always been a meat and potato Midwestern family, so I don't know about that. But I was kind of curious, since you work with Volkswagen, do they still get some, I don't know if I want to say grief or some rebuttal because of their history, because of their beginnings? Do they have to fight? Do they have to still fight that?
They don't have to fight that, but it's part of their corporate consciousness. So let me give you some context for those of you who are not familiar with this. A lot of companies, German companies that have been around for a while, that have been around through the Nazi period, have, to varying degrees, benefited from the horrendous ideology that the Nazis perpetuated. So they enslaved people in concentration camps, and they killed people in extermination camps, and the enslaved populations were put to work for German companies. And it's not just Volkswagen who benefited from that. It was many others. Continental Tires, right in your backyard. Their North American headquarters are in the Charlotte area. Continental Tires just released a study that they had commissioned by an independent historic research team. And so the company itself says, we need to look at our past, what happened, and make that fully transparent. So the study comes out, says, sure enough, you benefited from this. And the company is not only making a kowtow and saying, oh, this was bad and we apologize. No, they actually, that usually prompts a company to say, okay, we need to be more inclusive. It's not just about diversity and hiring diverse people, because you may have heard the term diversity is being invited to the ball. Inclusion is actually being asked to dance. And equity means you can choose the music. So these companies take this serious, and they make more sustainable efforts to not right the wrongs that were done, but to create something great from it now. So they devote resources and time to inclusion projects, or they make payments to, if it was Jewish slaves, then they would probably give finance some nonprofit project in Israel, or I don't know exactly what they're doing. But your question was around Volkswagen, and I got sidetracked. Yes, companies do look at this, and it's more than Volkswagen. It's most German organizations that were around at that time that take their own history serious and own up to it instead of sweeping it under the carpet.
Thank you.
Nice. And I love the history that you know. I love when people ask you those history questions and you're like all over it. All over
It's a
it.
history major in college. There you go.
There you go. Now, I have a question for, if you are a guest here, would you do me a favor and just write your name and where you're calling in from in the chat? That would be awesome. And if you have questions regarding our Toastmasters meeting does meet every Friday, 12:30 to 1:30. And right now we're on Zoom. So we can go back to we normally met at Blair Road Church. And we are not able to go back to the church at this time, but we will later on. And I have another question for you. So bank code, KAN, and the B went in the trash, correct, Christian?
It's a low number, my blueprint, which is one of the points of contention between me and my wife, who is much more organized and much more strategic than I am. So yes. Yeah.
And I think that you had, the person that asked that had guessed his code as KN or NK. Did he guess it as NKAB?
I think Jack said nurturing first, right?
Okay. I
No,
thought
I
he
said K.
I thought he
I
said
said-
Oh, okay.
KN.
Well then.
Yes, I said KNAB. Yeah, I thought I did.
Well then.
Maybe I was
Hey,
listening.
you're spot on, Jack, and I apologize if I didn't hear that right. Thanks
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
clarifying.
I thought he was close. He's
Yeah, 'cause
been
maybe it said
practicing.
25. Okay.
It takes
I ask
K
a
to know
question
a
real
K,
quick.
right?
Yeah, K's no K's. That's true. That is true.
Yeah, so you and I have the same bank code, so I know what the blueprint is like, and I've attracted blueprint women into my life, and they're hell on earth, basically.
Yeah, but they keep you in check and they make sure the bills get paid on time.
I mean, that's the bad side. The good side is they're awesome, you know.
Being
Yeah.
recorded, by the way.
That's all good. So yeah, so that's
I'll
why
say some of them are.
that's why our group stays so connected. If you knew anything more about the bank codes, which some of you do, some of you don't. So Vicky's code, and on why I put Vicky and I work so well together, is her code is almost opposite of mine. She's like blueprint all over the map. And again, so she goes back and forth with these two things. And I am forever bending the rules. And she said, no, Toastmasters, here's the rules. And I'm like, well, I'm sure there's a gray area there. She's like, no, there's no gray area. And I'm always looking for the gray area. So that's why we kind of work as a good team here. A good
Vicky's
team.
a bit of a crumbled blueprint, though, you know.
This is because she's such a high action that she's like, Donald, enough already, right? No.
Well, you
I have a question for you guys. So I see most of you. I don't see Jeff and Adam. I see Sue's picture, but it looks like the majority of you are white. So, Jeffrey, are you the only African American in this group, or are there more that are just not on today?
Yes, there are more. They're just not here today.
All right. So, what's it like to be Black in Charlotte compared? Are you originally from Charlotte?
Yeah, born and raised right here in Charlotte.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I love it. But I did have one question, Christian. But it's great.
Yes.
I haven't. I mean, of course, you're always going to have bias. But I mean, I expect that people are going to like you. It doesn't matter whether they don't like you because you're tall or you're Black. It's just
Right.
seems to be part of human nature. My question to you is, how was your training received in the workplace? I recently read a book called Diversity Inc. by Paula Newkirk. She's a professor at NYU. And she's like, a lot of resentment is in the workplace when they have to attend these cultural or diversity trainings. And sometimes they actually have a negative impact versus the impact that was, because people feel like they're being preached to and told, hey, you're racist, even though they might not feel. So how was your training received in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think the label diversity has become a bit of a misnomer in the U.S. workplace. Maybe also in Canada, but more so in the U.S., where diversity has been slapped on everything. That is, we need to do something about this inequality thing. We don't know what to do, so let's do a diversity training. What a great day to have this conversation, Jeffrey. Today is the 57th anniversary of Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech. That was 57 years ago today. So we got to do something, right? And it's rarely. It rarely lasts. It rarely sticks. And as you rightfully say, some people have this allergic reaction to say, "Oh, now we're being preached to again," or "Now we're being told that we're not doing it right again," or "Now." That's why I'm a bit at odds with that terminology. It's still being used, but we don't use it in our work. I don't call it diversity training because it raises already all the resistance walls, and people say, "Oh, now we're going to talk about this again. I'd rather not." Or, "Hey, I'm not racist, but ... or I'm colorblind is one of the responses I love when I get that. So I'm steering clear of that terminology because it's usually not helping the conversation. So if the name or the terminology creates difference just by calling it that, if we're driving a wedge into the work before we've actually begun, then what's the point in using it? So I'm not a big advocate for that. So I like the inclusion term. I like the here in North America, I would call it, let's create a participatory workplace. Let's see how we can bring out the best in every one of us. And that's how I would like to label my work. My job is to be an agent to help every single member of a group to be the best they can be, no matter what they look like, who they pray to, or what they eat at home. Doesn't really, that shouldn't be at the forefront. And I noticed this, and this is a learning process for me as well. And Jeannie knows this because she's been to my house. So when we moved to Atlanta, we moved to a part of the city where our white friends said, no, you don't want to move there. And the stupid German kid says, well, why not? What's wrong? Well, this is, up until recently, this was ghetto and this is all black. And I said, interesting. So that's the label you want to put on it. So, you just made it more attractive to me. So we moved there regardless, and we moved there despite some probably well-meaning advice, or I don't know how well-meaning it was. The bottom line of the story is that now we've been here for 3 years and change, and yes, we're the minority, and it feels good because it's reinvigorated that continuous learning process. I am confronted with those people who are different from me. I'm the odd one out. So every time I walk the street, yes, there are a few Latinos and white people here and there, but the majority of my neighbors is African American. And I'm having the conversation with the others on a daily basis. And I learn from that. And do we sometimes say things that are stupid to each other? Yeah, once in a while. I'm not saying that my job is not to help people avoid every cultural misstep. It's about learning from it. And I learn from it too. And I found that to be, I like the energy of diversity because it keeps me on my toes. I continue to learn. And especially in this day and age with what's going on in US society and all the public discourse, being immersed in a neighborhood like this allows me to continuously understand better what's happening. And for me as a high knowledge person, this is how I improve. If I know more, then I can adjust my behavior. That's how I go about it. Not every personality type is like that, but for me that works. So I know this was a long-winded answer, Jeffrey. So corporations do, I can only speak for myself, right? The way I approach that topic in a corporate training room, I lower people's defenses. I do go in the training, I do go to places where it becomes uncomfortable for some people. and they will feel like I'm talking exactly to them. And it might not be, and they might not like that. However, I don't let them sit there with that negative emotion. So I dissolve that energy in the room, and the goal is to walk away from it knowing, hey, okay, we've shown light on this thing from different angles, and now my picture is clear, and now I have a better understanding from it. Whether people change their behaviors or not is at that point not in my control, but they can't unhear what I told them, or what happened in the room, what other people told them. So to give you the bottom line answer, Jeffrey, even though there might be some initial resistance to it, in the end, it's received well. And that's a very subjective personal experience.
Thank you.
Awesome, Christian. I have one question, and then we're going to go to Adam. Can you repeat the dance analogy, please, for Elaine? She's getting ready to write notes. That's why, look at her.
Okay.
She's ready to go.
I don't claim ownership. There's a lady there's a woman by the name Verna Myers, and Verna with a horizontal line over the A. Vernae Myers. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. African American lady, does wonderful work, and she's got books out, and she's got her own D&I consultancy, and she's now the head of diversity at Netflix. And this is a quote that I got from her, and she says, diversity is being invited to the ball. Inclusion is being asked to dance. And I added the equity portion, which is you get to pick the music. So you're not dancing to somebody else's music.
I love it. And Adam had a question.
Hey, Adam.
Hey, everybody. First time caller in, so this is a great experience listening to everything about it. Just to add on to more of Christian's comments, I work as a global market development director, so I have to see different world's markets and understand how my company can apply what we do to them. And 2 years ago was the first year that we had a global sales meeting of 450 people from around the world get into one room. And the required reading for that was something called the culture map. And this was
It's on my desk behind this sign.
There you go. Yeah, this I cannot underestimate this book. This book is actually talking a lot how people interact, about their core, how they operate just because of their culture. And then how do we have to be sensitive about how do we get into there? Not necessarily do we have to cushion things. It's more of how do we have to interact in order for us to get the desired outcome that we're used to in our current culture. So it was very interesting to me of dealing with the Chinese and dealing with the Japanese and dealing with the South Americans, and also dealing with Germany and other European nations that we have there. And trying to come together to get the same outcome. And also us as a global organization, at least my group's the global organization of understanding how the world is doing specific thing and then us responding to it. It's different no matter which continent you're on. So definitely echo that. But I would say that the cultural differences are actually easier on an international scale because you're an outsider, right? Versus being the cultural differences of your own country and understanding that your biases and their biases are inherent to the conversation of the map that you're living within, right? So it's one of those things
that makes it easier for me. So as an outsider to U.S. culture, but somebody who knows it intimately well, it's easier for me to put the finger in the open flesh wound because I don't feel that pain, right? It's easy for me to be the outsider pointing at things that may have not been resolved, which is incredibly more difficult if I did that in my native culture. I completely agree.
Yeah, it also allows you almost to get out of jail free card, not to use that element, but you can interject yourself into a conversation of learning to try to draw out conversation, where if you're part of that map, it's very hard to distance yourself and still ask the question objectively to try to come up with some kind of knowledge of the situation without being drawn into it. So.
Yeah. I agree. By the way, Adam, if you wouldn't mind, because I see in the chat the organization you work for, if you would send me an email or ask Jeannie for my contact information, I'd love to stay in touch because I've been talking to your company about exactly that. So I'm curious. You're in North Carolina, but your company's headquartered in Atlanta and in Detroit, right? So
Yeah, we
are
actually
you a
have
spinoff?
offices all over the world. So our global office is in Atlanta. I work out of my home in Indian Trail next to Charlotte. We have an office in Charlotte. So I travel a lot. That's why I don't have to go to an office. So
Got it. Well, in this day and age, right, we all learned that we can be efficient from home as well if you don't have dogs barking and power drills in the wall. So yeah, would love to continue this chat offline with you, Adam, if you're okay with it, or find me on LinkedIn. Either way, I'm easy to find.
okay, cool. Thank
Yep.
you.
And I put your
And that,
information in the chat as well, Christian.
and thank you. And I extend this to all of you. So I don't want to be partial to Adam. So if anyone feels like this is a conversation you would like to continue in a different context, in a different setting, Jeannie knows how to find me.
I know where he lives.
Yes, you know where my house lives.
And I want to thank everybody for joining, especially Christian. Yes, the goal is to have Christian come up and do some live speaking in Charlotte when we're allowed to do that again and can have room full of people. So that will
would
be
be lovely.
amazing. And his beautiful bride, Brigitte Hofele, as well. And yes, I have practiced saying that last name over and over and over. And I love I asked to introduce Brigitte on several different occasions, his wife, so I can practice the last name saying it really loud because it's really a fun name to say over a microphone really loud. I'm just saying. It is.
Could be. Yeah.
It really is.
You know when it's not a fun name to say out loud, when I'm in my hometown and somebody shouts it across the town square. That happened to me as a kid, and it was never in a good way because somebody caught me at doing something wrong, and everybody knew who my parents were. So it took less than half an hour until my parents found out about it. So,
Wow. So I want to thank everyone for being here. Christian's information's over there. And if you want to come to any of our meetings, it's 12:30 to 1:30. Just reach out to Joni. Can you put an email in there, or Vicky in the chat so that they can have a contact email so they can join another meeting that we have. And I would love to have Christian to come back or come up here, and as well as his wife speak as well. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun. And we welcome any of our guests to come back anytime you want, especially even Susan, California, and Nan's in New Mexico. However, they can still come and hang out with us because we're on Zoom right now. And we love it. So anybody can save the chat. I don't have it locked down or anything. So anybody can click and save the chat to get Christian's information and Joni's information because she is our membership VP. So again, thank you. Is there any burning last minute questions for Christian? Edwin.
Yes, I can't help it. One of my most favorite books is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I was curious, Christian, if within the context of that book, which takes in a lot, the 5th habit is my favorite habit. Seek first to understand and then be understood. Do you find that comes into play in your world?
all the time. And thank you for bringing it up. It is one of the techniques, or one of the I don't want to call it a technique. One of the tips we give people is you have 2 eyes and you have 2 ears and you have 1 mouth. So the ratio is clear. Your sensory input system is designed to receive more and to send less. So I think this is one of the common courtesy principles that were often instilled to us by our elders, in my case my grandmothers. So shut up and listen before you think you need to send something. I've read it in a different way, which resonated with me, is instead of being interesting, try to be interested. And too often people feel a need to be interesting to others instead of showing genuine interest in their vis-a-vis. And I tell people there is, in intercultural interactions, asking the wrong question could easily derail the conversation. I would say, though, that no question is off limits if you can ask it without judgment and with genuine curiosity. And the operating word here is genuine. So, long-winded answer again, Edwin. I completely agree with your comment, and yes, that is a practice that we instill in our clients, to listen more and talk less.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all for coming. We're really good about the 12:30 to 1:30. However, we're okay because this is an open house, so we're allowed to go over. If there's other questions, I know Christian probably has other meetings he needs to get to, so I don't want to hold him up too much.
I'm good
However,
for another 5-6 minutes.
perfect. However, we have him here, so if you have other questions that you may want to ask, go right ahead. Otherwise, we can go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you, Adam. All right. Well, thanks again, Christian, and I'm sure they're going to have questions. Oh, do I have
Vicky had
Vicky
her
up
finger
there?
up. Vicky had a hand
I
up.
was just gonna, I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to say, listening to the culture from you, because so much lately you hear so much about culture. I have a friend that we're always talking about this culture and that culture and problems because of a difference in culture. It's just, it's heightened my thinking about how important this is in Toastmasters, because when you first started talking, you talked about the Toastmasters culture, and that is so true. And thank you. I mean, I knew you were going to be wonderful, but
Thank
actually
you.
you went way above. I've met you one time, and I can't wait to see you again. It was wonderful. Thank you, Jeannie, for putting us all together.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we'll have him back to speak more on the different little segments, but I figured this would be a great introduction, and then we'll bring him back. I want him here live. So let's focus on everybody being allowed to be out and be live together again.
And Brigida, bring Brigida, because people, y'all are just gonna love her to death. Oh my gosh.
Well,
She's
we
much
got
better than
to
I am. I
hear
don't know
her.
why I'm here. You should have seen her. She's much better at this than I am.
I disagree. Don't tell her I said that though. No. They are what I call a power couple, and they're amazing, and I'm so fortunate, grateful, and to have them in my life.
Yes.
Likewise, Jeannie. Likewise.
Yeah.
I wish all of you a wonderful weekend. I sense it's going to get louder here in a second. So
Thanks,
thank
Christian.
you for allowing me into your midst. Have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to meet all of you in some way or form in the future. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye,
Bye.
everyone.